What's up, folks? Hope you're okay. Welcome to a very special episode of Let's Talk About Training. Wow, that was super awkward, wasn't it? Okay, so today I want to talk about DOMs, and that's going to be kind of the topic of the video. Now, if you saw yesterday's video, or last video, you'd have seen that I got back into the powerlifting program. I managed to hit my squats, my deadlifts, my bench, my close grip bench should I say, and I felt really good in the training. My hips playing up a little bit today, but not really anything down to the fact of the program. It's kind of just a stretching that I've just got to work on, some foam rolling that I've got to work on as well, just to recover from the football match that I played on Sunday just gone. But today I want to talk about DOMs. I'm actually feeling DOMs in my quads, not really too much, but enough because I've had a gap between my training and not training legs or quads as much. So if you don't know what DOMs are, they are simply called delayed onset of muscle soreness. And there's typically a window where you can experience DOMs, and it can be anything from 24 to 48 to 72 hours that you'll be feeling kind of a pain or a discomfort, shall I say, in the leg. If it's a pain, it could be an injury. If it's a discomfort, it's the fact that you've trained the muscle. So what is delayed onset of muscle soreness, or DOMs? The causes of DOMs are essentially when you weight train, you're putting a stimulus through a muscle, and that stimulus is causing the muscle to contract. But when the muscle contracts, it makes like a little micro tear in the muscle fibre. Now, as you can imagine, when you create a muscle tear or a micro tear in the muscle fibre, it has to repair itself. Okay, so our ability to then push that same weight becomes increased because we're creating those micro tears, we're repairing over those tears, and then when we come back to the same stimulus and response, we're able to push the weight again, but more comfortable because we've got more muscle mass that we can push, okay, that weight. So the muscle soreness is kind of like an inflammatory response. It's basically saying, hey, I've worked, I'm letting you know, and this is because I want you to be very wary and be very careful that you don't do something that could potentially cause more harm to the body. Okay, so it is a response that we get from training. Now, you've got to understand that depending on your experience with lifting is going to depend on your muscle soreness. So someone who is new to lifting may experience more muscle soreness at the beginning because their body isn't used to the training. After they experience kind of a long period, after they've been training for a long period of time, they'll find that their ability to handle greater loads will be better, there'll be maybe less frequent DOMs, they won't feel it as much, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay? So we've got to understand that the greater load placed on the body, that there's going to be a greater muscle soreness because the muscle is having to work harder. Okay, so there's a potential that we're going to cause greater micro tears in the fibres because we're putting a greater stimulus through the muscle. So some considerations to be wary of or to take into consideration. We want to use progressive overload with our training, and it's something I spoke about in previous videos. So if we go into the gym and we are squatting, for example, and we squat 100 kilos in week 1, when we come back to it maybe week 2, we want to be able to squat maybe 102.5 kilos or 105 kilos, or we want to be able to do 100 kilos where week 1 we did 5 reps. We want to be able to do 8 reps. We may have done 4 sets of 5. This time we want to do 5 sets of 5. So we want to try and create a different stimulus where the body's having to work a little bit harder to be able to produce a greater output from the body. So when we're looking at kind of progressive overload, there's sets, there's reps, there's weight, there's control, there's also the technique that we're using. So what I mean by control is time under tension. If you know what time under tension is, great. If you don't, I'll put it into another video, or you can check it out in my podcasts. I've got loads of information on it, so you can check it out. The Mind Muscle Connection, the link is in the description box below. Some considerations there for you. So making sure that we're using progressive overload, and that can still produce a delayed onset of muscle soreness response, okay, because our body's having to work harder to move that weight. So, some repercussions of delayed onset of muscle soreness. So as I mentioned at the start, delayed onset of muscle soreness, or DOMS, is essentially a kind of like an inflammatory response or a repairing response of the body. Now, if you train too aggressively and you go too hard in the gym on leg day, for example, what you're going to find is you're not going to be able to move for 3 or 4 days. And all that's doing is telling you that the amount of stimulus you placed on the body was too great for your body to handle. So we want to be able to feel that we've worked. The muscles are struggling, they're straining. But if we physically cannot walk for like 2 or 3 days after leg day, it simply means that we've just gone way too hard, okay? Because DOMS is like a recovery mechanism. And if we're constantly hammering that recovery mechanism, our ability to recover is going to be lower. Okay, it's not going to be as strong. We're going to be struggling to recover properly, and we're not going to get those optimal gains that we want. So the progress is going to be nulled. So when you're new to lifting, chances are you're going to feel DOMS a little bit more than someone who is more experienced and got a longer training life. And that's absolutely fine, okay? It's just your body getting used to the stimulus that you're now placing on it. The other times that you might find it where you get DOMS are if you're trying a new training program. So if you are someone who's an experienced lifter and you're trying a new training program, it might be switching from powerlifting to bodybuilding, bodybuilding to powerlifting. It might be switching from kind of a strength phase into an endurance phase, or an endurance phase into a strength phase. There's so many different kind of avenues that we could go into. But when you're trying a new training program, you will find that you experience DOMS just a little bit more, okay? So that's absolutely fine. The other thing as well is when you've had a longer break, maybe you've had a month off training due to injury or kind of holidays and travels, when you come back to training, you'll find that you experience DOMS just a little bit more as well. So, do you have to have DOMS to experience, to know that you've had a good workout? And quite frankly, no, you don't. You should be able to gauge that now from the information that I've given you. The more consistent you train, the less likely you are to have DOMS, because it's increasing your ability to recover. Now, like I mentioned with the sets, the reps, the weight, control technique, all those kind of variables, when you place those on the body, you will find that you get some soreness, some aching, but it's not going to be as strong as when you first started, because your body's ability to recover is so great, okay? Having a few weeks off the gym, again, like I said, will result in DOMS being increased, just because the stimulus that you're now going to place on the body when you get back into training is going to be heightened, okay? So the body's just kind of had a little bit of time to say, oh, don't need to work as hard because we're not placing that stimulus on the body anymore, so it's all good, it doesn't matter, okay? So they aren't a sign of muscle growth. DOMS aren't a sign of muscle growth, so don't be thinking that the greater your DOMS, the more muscle growth I'm going to have, and the bigger I'm going to get in a quick time. So it's not about hammering the body, it's about giving it a response that your body can then adapt and grow from that. So again, that progressive overload, okay? So DOMS isn't necessarily a sign of muscle growth, it's actually a sign of muscle damage. So you've actually broken down the muscle enough to then create a response where we have to then repair the muscle, grow, and then move forward. But the greater the DOMS, the longer the recovery, so the less you're able to train the muscle. So if you imagine getting DOMS on Monday and you can't walk until Friday, you can't train legs in that period. Now, the protein synthesis cycle is heightened for 48 hours, so again, we could train legs maybe Wednesday or Thursday and be able to go again. Whereas if you can't walk until Friday, you're struggling, so you can't train legs until potentially Monday. So that's a whole 7 days when you've not been able to train legs. So the idea is that we want some muscle soreness, but it's not going to affect us too much, that in a few days time we can get back in the gym, we can train legs again, we can get more protein synthesis availability in the legs, grow the muscle a little bit more, and that repeated cycle over a longer period of time is going to be a lot greater than being able to only train legs once a week because they're too damaged. Okay? So, some nutritional considerations. We want to make sure that we've got adequate protein in the body. Why? Simply because if we train, we need protein. Protein is going to help us build muscle. Okay, it's going to get into the cells, it's going to recover better. So not having enough protein, you can obviously see that the availability to grow muscle is going to be nulled. It's not going to be as high. We're not going to be able to train as effectively because our body isn't repairing well enough. And we're just going to struggle in general day-to-day life. So making sure that you've got adequate amounts of protein. Typically I say roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if you're 150 pounds, you're going to be aiming for 150 grams of protein. Supplementing with protein shakes is a great way of increasing your protein intake to get to your targets, but that's a whole different topic. Second thing we want to consider is carbs. The reason why we want to consider carbs is because we need a sufficient amount of carbs in our system to be able to weight train, because weight training burns glycogen. Carbs get broken down into glycogen, they get stored in the muscles, they get stored in the liver, they get stored in the cells, and we need to use that glycogen to be able to move that weight. So if we don't have adequate supplies of carbs and we don't have quality nutrients in the body, we can't use that energy. We don't have that energy there to be able to weight train effectively. So make sure that we've got good consideration when it comes to having the adequate amount of carbs in the body. Third thing is quality fats. And the reason why is this, quality fats help balance out our hormone levels. So if you're having good quality fat supply, your hormones are going to be in balance, your testosterone levels are going to be better for males, females, your estrogen levels are going to be better. We're going to be able to sustain and be able to maintain like a good level of hormone balance, and that's perfect for what we need when it comes to weight training. Okay, certainly with recovery as well. Finally, micronutrients. We want to make sure that we've got a good adequate supply of micronutrients, so getting your vegetables in, getting your salads in, getting the kind of supplementation that we need, simply down to the fact of they're going to help transport the nutrients around the body effectively, get them into the cells and be able to recover a lot better. Right folks, I've been talking for probably about 10-15 minutes. That is everything that I wanted to talk about on DOMS. If you've got any comments, questions, concerns, post them down below.